Hello, my friends. Back on the podcast today is Mateo Lopez, co-founder of Kilo. Always great to have Mateo on the podcast. And today he's dropping a ton of knowledge bombs and really helpful tips about the age-old question: how much time do you as a gym owner need to be spending on marketing? So if you're struggling to find the time to spend on marketing, and when you have the time, you're not sure how to spend it, this is a great episode for you. So keep on listening. Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. And today I'm super stoked to have the man, the myth, the legend back on the podcast again, who I'm the number one fan of. It's Mateo Lopez from Kilo. Hello, my friend.
Hello, I'm a number one fan of yours, so it's
It
mutual.
goes
It's
both
great.
directions, I
It
think. Yeah,
does.
it goes both. It's a love fest.
Yes.
Yeah, for those of you who didn't hear Mateo on the previous podcast, he is the co-founder of Kilo, a man who wears many hats over there in the Kilo verse. And also has your own podcast. Do you want to tell people about the podcast that you all do?
Yeah, so my business partner John and I, and also sometimes Mark. Sometimes
Yeah,
Mark,
Mark
I'm
comes
sure
on it
Mark
too,
knows your
and they've all
fitness.
had John Franklin's been on the podcast and this podcast as
Yeah.
well, so you all know him. But they get together and do gym chats.
Yes, yes. Gym World Worldwide, and yeah, we've been interviewing. It's the show has evolved. It started off as kind of a news, an irreverent fitness business news show, and has since evolved into more of a classical interview format. And
Mm,
we've been interviewing a lot of successful gym owners, not just in our neck of the woods, but also in yours. We've had plenty of
yeah.
BFU people on there, and it's been really, really great to just learn from different people from different corners of the fitness industry and how they make money,
Yeah.
because a lot of people struggle with that, making money in this business. So
It's
it's been
true.
really cool. Yeah.
It's true. It's a great podcast. So, friends, if you're looking for another podcast to listen to that's spot on with great takeaways, great content about gym, go check it out. Gym World Worldwide.
Check it out.
And I have a very important disclaimer to start this podcast with, which is I have a new puppy, and you might hear him in the background. I'm not sure if it's going to come through or not. It sounds like he's being tortured. I promise he's not. He's just not
He's
in
just
my
learning.
he's just
He's just
learning to
learning.
be alone. you
Yeah.
know some of us
And
need
sometimes
help.
we all need that lesson, I think,
Yeah,
you
he needs
know?
to learn that, Daddy does a podcast and he can't be, at my feet every hour of the day, and he hates it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you hear the sounds of a tortured puppy, just know that he's happy and safe and just a little sad in his learning discomfort. Um, Having said that, Mateo, the thing I want to talk about today and pick your brain about is I think one of the number one challenges our Unicorn Study members have around marketing. And it actually almost has nothing to do with marketing itself. The number one challenge I see them have is figuring out what to spend their time on when it comes to marketing, how to consistently make time to do marketing. And I think I mentioned before we started recording, we have some members who are still pretty small and doing it all themselves, and they're the marketer and they're the advertiser and they're the everything. They're making the content, editing the content, posting the content, following up with the leads. We have people on the other end of the spectrum who need to make time to develop the relationship with external people, agencies, virtual assistants, other people who are maybe doing a lot of the work for them, but it still requires their time to keep the ball rolling, develop the strategies, all of that. And so I know this is a big pool to swim in, this topic of like, how much time does a gym owner need to make on marketing? And when they make the time, what the hell do they spend it on, given the fact that people can be in so many different places? So let's just start with just like throwing the ball in the water and say,
Yes.
where do you start with that topic? How do you think about, even when you were a gym owner, spending time on marketing?
Yeah, so I think the first caveat there is, if you're asking me about how to organize your time, I'm not the best. A very disorganized person, and I don't have good time management skills. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, I also think that you don't have to spend any time on marketing if you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to. You just have
Yep.
to make sure someone else in your business
Yep.
is, right? So if your perfect day is just organizing bumper plates over and over and optimizing your equipment space, you can do that as long
Yeah.
as you have effectively outsourced and delegated the other big roles and jobs at your gym, like marketing, like
Yeah.
making sales, like making conversations with prospects, right? So I think that's kind of thing number one.
Can I just
Um,
pause for a second there, Mateo, and
yeah,
say, I'm just so glad you started there because I have a wish for all the gym owners of the world, and you know who you are listening. I wish more of you would be honest with yourself about the fact that you just want to be a coach all day.
yeah,
Like you do want to be
yeah,
coaching with the clients, writing programs, organizing the bumper plates, right? And you actually are kind of just super turned off by the idea of being in front of a computer and learning to do Google ads, you know. And I think most of you should outsource it when you can. So I'm glad that you started with that context because I think more people, I think, should give themselves permission to be that person.
yeah, 100%. And now, having said that, if you are not there yet,
Yep.
right? If you're just starting out or your gym is struggling a bit, you don't have as many resources or team members at your disposal, right? You are going to have to get your hands dirty a bit. And so I think in terms of where you should be spending your time and how much of your time you should be spending on marketing or marketing related activities, it does depend on where you are in your entrepreneurial journey. The same way depends on your
Wow. Did you hear that?
yeah,
It got
that
loud.
sounded that sounded
Sounded awful.
um so so just like with your clients, right? Hey, what should my clients be working on? It depends on where they are in their fitness journey. Some are
Mm-hmm.
beginners, some are more
Exactly.
intermediate, some are more advanced, right? It depends on where you are in your entrepreneurial journey, right? And your gym owner journey. So there are, having talked with a lot of gym owners over the last year on the podcast, there are some people with some pretty sophisticated operations, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Personal friends of ours, Dan Trank and Kyle Fields at the Fort in NYC, they spend a lot of money, not just on ads, but also on equipment to create content, on editors. They have a really robust and sophisticated content machine over there.
Yep.
Cassie Day,
Yep.
one of your
Yeah.
star
Right. All day
pupils,
fit in Toronto.
yes, she has also a very robust content calendar that she's very methodical about managing and creating, and she has she is involved in that content creation process of scheduling photo shoots,
Mm-hmm.
scheduling posts, and then she is also when people engage with her content that she's created, she has her staff members DMing and reaching out to people who are interacting with that content, starting those conversations, getting them in the gym, right? So you can have a pretty, so if you are at that place, right,
Yep.
your operation can look that way. But also, if that's not you, it can be as simple as just standing out in the grocery store of the strip mall that your gym is in
Yep.
and handing out flyers, because I think at the end of the day, the thing that you should be spending your most time on, or at least the metric you should be focusing on the most, is conversations, right?
Yeah. Starting
um,
conversations with strangers. It's like
that's
the whole
it,
thing.
right? John, my buddy, my compatriot, he says, and he probably didn't coin this, but more conversations equals more conversions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that really is the key, right? Marketing is just getting on top of a mountain and like screaming into the void. I have $5 footlongs. Pay attention to me, and then see people like, oh, that seems pretty like a good deal, and then great. Let me start a conversation with you. Let me lead you into my place to get a sandwich, right? It's all it really is. It's just bouncing up and down and making a lot of noise to get some attention so that you can start a conversation with someone, right? And
Yeah.
so there are
Well,
lots of opportunities to have those conversations. And
mm-hmm.
so, again, it just depends on kind of where you're at.
Yeah. Well, I
Um,
love that. Let's continue to stay on this end of the spectrum,
yeah,
whereas, people are newer to the owning the gym or newer to focusing on marketing. And we know there's many gyms who open for a few years and don't really do a ton of marketing because they're just growing by word of mouth. I think, one of your gyms and certainly MFF was like that for many years. But there's going to become a point where you do have to focus on. The place you started, I think, is a great place to recommend, which is someone needs to make content. And whether that content is flyers for the grocery store or social media content, videos, someone needs to do that. And starting by having a calendar where you are in advance setting aside time to do that work is a great way to start thinking about organizing your time. Just a calendar of like, here's my theme for the week. I'm going to do 3 posts and 3 stories, or here's my theme for the month. I'm going to go to this grocery store and then this Foot Locker and then this, whatever the strategy is. I think having a calendar where you are dedicating and committing yourself to time spent on it as a priority, like that's a great place to start, regardless of what the strategy is. Yeah.
100%. I want to come back to that. I think we took one step back in that, like, let's say you have no money and no time to like produce anything,
Mm,
right? Let's say you
yep.
have absolutely nothing at your disposal. Most of you started your gym, I'm guessing, because you had a private book of clients that you were personal training, and then you wanted to take the dive, right? You want to like, I want to expand in my own space, do my own thing, right? So you have a group of existing clients.
Yep.
I think you should be having as many conversations as you can with those people, right?
Sure.
Because if you talk to your existing clients consistently in like an organized way, right? Like a check-in, athlete check-in, or a goal setting session or review every once in a while, you'd be like, hey, how's it going? I saw in our session the other day you PR'd your whatever, or
Mm-hmm.
you were able to, your low back pain says it doesn't hurt as much. Like, how's it going? Like, oh my God, it's amazing. Great.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else in your life who could benefit from this thing too? That
Yep.
unlocks a new conversation with a new stranger, right? So
Totally.
those are ways in which you're kind of putting in the reps of just practicing talking to new people, right? Ask your existing base and see if there's anyone else in their life that you can start a new conversation with, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of step number one.
Yeah, well
And
said,
then,
Mateo. I think that's it. Is the lowest hanging fruit is always your
yes,
existing clients, always referrals, and then once you have enough past clients, the past clients are kind of the next rung on the low hanging fruit ladder,
yes,
right? Of
exactly,
like getting
right,
people back and restarting those conversations. Yeah,
exactly. So that's
yeah,
kind of like thing number one is exhaust your existing group of people who are immediately in your vicinity. Um, then, as you said, your alumni, right? That's another list of people you can re-engage and start conversations with, right?
yeah,
And then once you kind of exhausted that, and you'll never really exhaust that, right?
yeah. That
Because
goes on forever.
that goes on forever. Um, but once you've kind of you know, yeah, done that step, right? Then is, as you were saying, creating content, and
Mm,
it just be like it's, and I think what you were saying with the calendar thing, consistency, I think is the most important part. And it doesn't have to be that polished. It's literally just like, is there someone alive at the gym? Are there lights on? Right? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like that is
to show proof of life.
show
That's
proof
a
of life.
great start. Yeah,
Yes, show proof of life, show that you exist, show that people are going to your gym and
yeah,
engaging with your service and with you. That's just kind of like step number one. And if you do want to be a little more intentional with it, right? There's this kind of idea with like and you don't know where to start, right? You don't, okay, I
hmm,
want to post every Monday and Thursday or whatever, but you don't know exactly what to do, right? Cassie talked about this on our podcast. You can't just wait for inspiration to kind of strike, right? And so what you can do is this thing. This is not. I think this exists. This is not my idea. I heard it from John. John probably heard it from someone. There's a hub and spoke kind of idea of creating content, right?
yep,
Where
yep,
you take a long piece of content and you break it up into little tiny pieces and have different spins on it, and that is a way in which you can kind of batch it and produce content, you know, you know, in a more efficient way, I guess. And so, I guess the way I would start it for people just starting out is like, what's the thing that you can talk about for like an hour? There's probably one thing you're really
yeah,
passionate about in the
yep,
fitness world that you can talk about for at least an hour straight. Maybe it's you know how diet culture is really toxic and you're passionate about why it's toxic and why your approach to fitness is better. Or maybe it's about, why trap bar deadlifts are the only thing anyone should ever do and no other movement should be done, right? And
yep,
if you can talk about it for an hour, then just talk about it for an hour in
yep,
whatever medium or format you prefer, right? You can write for an hour about it, or you can sit in front of a webcam or your phone and talk about it for an hour, or you can just record it and talk about it for an hour. And then you can break those little sections up and boom, that's like, if you can, if you, it's 61-minute posts about uh, that that topic that you just talked about for an hour, right? Um, Another way to approach it is, if you do have a hot take or something you're passionate about, you can format it differently. Like, I've observed this interesting thing about people who do CrossFit. I've observed that they all are weird. And so, or whatever it is, or they're all really strong, or they're all really fit, or they're all throwing up all the time. I don't know, whatever it is, right? Or it can be a story, right? I
yep,
tried CrossFit and my life was changed. Or I tried, unicorn fitness, and this happened, or my client did, right?
Yeah.
And or a contrarian take. I was kind of like saying that before, right?
Yeah.
Everyone says ice baths are awesome. I think they're not. Here's why,
I've
right?
seen
So
you try a few recently.
yes, yes. Unfortunately, I think there's more in my future, right? So
Yeah.
there's lots of ways in which you can just have an angle
Hmm.
on this one thing that you're really passionate
Well,
about,
I
or
love that for a few reasons, Mayo. One is
yeah,
because everyone has something that they really are passionate about, or have like a, what's the phrase, like a bee in their bonnet about, right?
hmm
That they can
hmm
just talk about for a long time. And most of the time, it's a thing that it's related often in some way to how you want to be impactful in your life. It's related to how you want to impact your clients or your community that you're building. And they can probably talk about it for a very long time. And so that's such an easy way to create content that's already in you. It's just the thing you already want to talk about at dinner parties
yes,
and complain about to your friends or your
yes,
coworkers. And the other thing that I love so much about that strategy is that it helps people start to think about the kind of reputation they want to have, right? Because the thing that you're consistently talk about is the thing you're going to be known for. And so as a
hmm
gym, what is the thing you're going to be talking about? Is it about back pain? Is it going to be the best CrossFit out on the planet, or the best, or the anti CrossFit, or the,
right.
like, what is the thing that you want to be known for in your community? And then, talk about that. I love that. Just talk for an hour, and then you have like 61-minute clips, or you have a podcast, and you also have some videos, and you also have transcribed, and it's a blog, and it's 10,
Yes,
20 emails,
exactly.
and and that's it's an easy way to get content out there about things you care about.
And so then once you do have it, now you have little, like 60 little threads, right? Instagram threads or whatever. Like then you start posting, right? And you create a calendar, as you said, on when you're going to post this stuff, schedule
Yeah.
it. And then once people start interacting with it, right? Maybe they like a post, maybe they comment. If you have stuff where you're tagging your members, right? If you're tagging your members, other people are going to see what your members are doing. Oh my
Yep.
gosh, Sally down the street just did this crazy trap bar deadlift. That's weird. Like, you can then start conversations with those people, right?
Yeah.
And again, that's the goal, is just starting more conversations. So you're putting out content with the goal of starting more conversations with strangers, so that you can um, show them your goods,
Yeah.
indoctrinate them into your awesome thing, and hopefully bring them in and sell them, right? So that's
Yeah.
that is the goal. You can do that by just simply DMing anyone who likes your post, DMing anyone who comments. um, that is another kind of uh, easy way, not easy, but a low cost way of
Yeah,
starting new
low cost
conversations.
and time efficient, right? I mean, if the
Yes.
whole question we're trying to kind of answer today is like, how much time do you need to spend, and how can you do it as efficiently as possible? It's like, yeah, well, you're going to spend some time talking to current clients, trying to get referrals consistently. You're going to try and restart conversations with past clients who've left. Then you're going to create some content you're going to put out so people know you exist, show signs of life in your gym, show what you're passionate about or pissed about, uh,
hmm
you know. And if you do that in this kind of hub and spoke model, where you're creating long content that's getting cut up, that's very efficient. 1 hour of your time can be a month's worth of content. I mean, you're going to spend time either hiring people or yourself editing that 60 minutes down. But most of you, even if you're starting your gym, you have money to afford some Fiverr help or some
Yeah.
Upworker help, right? And that's a good way to kind of leverage those dollars to get farther faster when you're, running solo or running super lean as a small team. So maybe let's just get, where the rubber meets the road. Can you just talk a little bit about, and I know we're going to be making this up, but I think I'm going to give us both permission just to kind of make this up, is what kind of time are we talking about? If you're just a few years into running your gym, and you're just doing the three things we just talked about, trying to get referrals, trying to get past members back when they leave, creating some content that's either in-person live content or digital content, and you're really doing most of that yourself. Are we talking about, and again, we're spitballing here. I'm guessing that's at least 2 or 3 hours consistently every single week of like dedicated, focused time. Would you agree? Like, I'm spitballing here, but I'm trying to give people like some sense of the kind of commitment I think this takes.
In terms of the creation part, yeah, it doesn't have to take that much.
Yeah.
It's you said, like, if a few hours every week, 5 hours every week, whatever it
Yep.
is. But the part that will take more time, and should, because
Yeah.
it's kind of the most valuable time you could be spending, is on the conversations that
Mm-hmm.
this content generates, right?
Yep.
On the prospects or the leads that this stuff generates. Reaching out consistently and communicating with people who are engaging with your content, or a paid ad, especially a paid ad, right?
Yeah.
That is where your focus needs to be. And while you can, get your list of new prospects and call them all and check them off the list pretty efficiently, that part's not the hard part. The hard part to me is being available, right? If someone
Yeah.
opts in, or someone likes a post, or if someone sees your ad and clicks on it, right, or whatever, you or someone needs to be available to reach out to them right away, right?
Immediately. Yep.
Yeah. That is the stuff that it makes a meaningful difference. There's tons of
Mm-hmm.
studies that we could link to in the show notes about
Yeah.
why being the first response, being the first to respond is critical in closing that person, and consistency. Right, there are plenty of studies that show sometimes it takes the ninth outreach attempt for someone to
Yep.
actually engage with you and book that free thing or the consult or whatever it is. And most businesses give up after the first one, after the third
Yeah.
one, right? So it's the reaching out consistently, and not letting your leads go cold. That's the
I'm
piece.
I'm so
That's the
glad you
piece.
brought that up, Mateo, because you're right. I mean, I was taking the approach to this conversation. Let's talk about like just putting stuff out there. But you're right. That actually isn't the most time consuming part, right?
Yeah.
Like that actually, if you can be efficient using some of the things you've talked about here, like you can do that in a few hours, 2 or 3 hours per week, and is the creating content and the ads, etc. You're right that I think what they really also want to be thinking about in this conversation is once you put that stuff out into the world, are you available to talk to those people? Are you
Mm-hmm.
able to have meaningful follow up, multiple rounds of follow up, consistent everyday follow up? So, given that you might spend 2 or 3 hours a week making content, there's probably like an hour a day at least.
At least.
Someone has to be available to do that follow up, ideally more. Right. And over time, more and more people get involved in lead follow up on your team. And you
Yes.
can kind of hopefully cover most of the days for people to be immediately available. Uh, until then, I think having a little time every day to make sure you're moving the ball forward with each conversation you started is really, really critical. Yeah.
And where you brought we started the conversation off of like, you don't have to do any of this stuff. It's true. You can outsource it or whatever. But
Yep.
I do think it is important for you, for any new and this goes for any new process at your gym that you're kind of standardizing, right? You should be the one going through the reps the
Hmm.
first few times, not few, those first few rounds or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um, you should be the one going through it so you get an understand of what success looks like, and basically what you're looking for out of this new process, right? And
Yeah.
setting expectations.
Yeah.
You should be
Yeah.
going through this, refining the process, and getting a sense of how it should be done before handing it
Hmm.
off. You may not be the best closer, but you should be going through it to say, okay, well, at least I can identify what would make this better so I can
Well,
find the right person
yeah.
for this
What would
job.
make a good closer?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you won't really know that unless you try it a few times.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not great on video, maybe. But I now kind of see, after watching myself, I'm a little stiff, I'm a little awkward. I can find the person I think in my staff or in my whatever group here that can be the one who will be the creating the TikToks or whatever it is. You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying? So
Yep.
yeah, and lead nurture kind of, it sucks. It is really, it's the worst. It
It's a
is
grind, right?
awful.
It's an everyday thing you have
It's a
to touch.
grind, especially because you can have the best ad agency in the world running
Yeah.
the Google ads, the SEO, the Facebook ads for your business. But if they give you 100 leads a day in a magical world, right? Like, you still need to call them. You still need
Yeah.
to follow up. Um, Maybe you have the resources to hire a phone agent, a call center for yourself. But again, great, but then you have to make sure that they're taking advantage of
Yep.
the inbound traffic that you're spending money for on. And so, yeah, again, you're only going to know that if you go through it a few times.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
I'm
that's
saying a
such
few,
a
but it's a lot of times. It's a lot
yeah.
of
It's
times.
a lot of times. I'll say this, that I'll do a yes and to that, because I think that many of you listening are engaged enough and want to be engaged enough in all aspects of your business that you should learn hands on in a hands on way what your standards are. like what you think good work looks like in most areas of your business. I will say, I do think that this is a yes. And I think there's probably a handful of people listening, or gym owners that I know, who are just so not interested in being good at lead follow up or sales. You should just find someone who is. You should hire a consultant or a part-time person or someone who's coming with batteries included, so that you don't have to be the one to figure it out on your own, because you just hate it so much that you're never going to be in that spot where you're helpful at determining what good work looks like, because you're just mad about it the whole time. And I think that's a relatively small percentage. I'm being a little cynical, but I know them. I know who you are out there. And I think if those few of you, just find someone who has some sales experience, find someone who has some, lead follow-up, some closing experience, and let them guide you. Let them be the one who helps you decide what your standards are at your gym, because you just might never have a good attitude about it. And that's okay. You're good at other things.
I
But
think that's
someone has to lay down the law.
That's totally solid. There are certainly things that I like. Okay, I know this is important, but I refuse to learn this. I
It's true.
refuse to
Yeah, it's true a lot with
engage in this
finance,
thing.
right? Like I don't,
Yeah,
no gym owner is probably going to get good at being at their bookkeeping
yeah,
before they hire a book. You probably shouldn't. Just go hire a
yeah.
bookkeeper. Just hire,
Correct.
an accountant, right? Like you don't need to get good at that at first. Just find someone who is, and pay them when you can. And I think,
100%.
there's plenty of people in your community, clients of yours who have sales experience, right? Neighbors who have sales. Find someone that's cheap you can barter with at first if you really just don't want to do it yourself. But then do create standards. Have a great roadmap, playbook, whatever you want to call it, for how the work gets done that you understand, so you can hold people accountable to doing it well. And that's just critical if you want to keep owning a gym.
Or you can
Yeah.
find a mentor or
Yeah.
advisor. Maybe it's like
Yeah.
someone at BFU who
Yeah.
will help you figure out
Yes.
what the SOPs are for that
100%. We'll
thing.
just give you the playbooks. But even in
Yeah.
our work, and this material from working with as long as you have, right? It's like, we're going to give you the playbook, but then we're going to help you right size it for you. So even we're
Yes.
not giving you, I don't think there's actually a such thing most of the time as done for you content. I think there's started for you content, right? And we have mountains and mountains of started for you content that helps you get farther faster. Yeah.
100%.
Well, we could keep doing this all day, but I'm going to force us to start wrapping it up,
Okay.
because we're already 26 minutes in, and I feel like there's so
Wow.
much more we could cover. But I think this is super
Fantastic.
helpful. If you had to kind of recap some of the things that you hope are takeaways for our listeners, what's a few?
More conversations equals more conversions.
Yep.
And that is the goal of any kind of marketing effort. It is to generate more conversations. So if you're trying to figure out where to spend your time or what metric to focus on the most,
Yep.
it's starting conversations. And then the second thing is once you get an opportunity to start one, follow through,
Yes.
communicate consistently. Um, and there's an art to that, right?
Yeah.
It's say you see someone like your post, you slide into their DMs and you say, "Hey, I saw you like the post. What had you interested? Or we do this, and that at the gym." If they don't respond, okay, let them sit for a second. You don't
Yeah.
want to be you don't want to be hounding them, but you
We're
should
not trying to
have
get a
something
restraining order,
right.
right?
But maybe after a couple of days, like, "Hey, just want to see if you saw my thing or whatever,"
Yep.
or "Here's another post you might be interested in," or "Hey, here's an ebook," whatever. There is an art to that. We can come back on. We can talk about that later on.
Yes.
But
That'll be
yes,
our next episode together.
yes. Conversation equals more conversions. Once you have an opportunity to start a conversation, be consistent. And yeah, if you don't like marketing, if you don't like sales, if you don't like calling leads nonstop, you don't have to do it, but it has to get done. It's probably the most important work you could be focusing on, especially if you're starting out.
Yep.
Um, you know, you cannot afford to not let a lead go cold when you're
Yep.
starting out, when you're going through a downturn, when you're struggling to get new clients. You cannot afford to not follow up on someone who opted in your website or who liked a post or a referral that your member just mentioned in passing as they
Mm-hmm.
were leaving, right? You
Yep.
have to be following up with those potential leads, those prospects, and taking advantage of them, so that you can survive long enough to outsource the stuff that you don't want to do,
Yeah.
right? So I
Yeah.
think that's the takeaway.
Well said, my friend. Great summary. It's like you're an expert or something.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but
Well, friends, I hope you found this valuable. I always learn something every time you're on this podcast, Mateo, and today is
Oh,
no
great.
exception. And so, thanks for being here. And listeners, if you want more Mateo action, you want to go listen to their podcast, Gym World
Yep.
Worldwide. Sometimes you'll see Mark Fisher on it. You also know John Franklin, co-founder of Kilo, also on it, podcast guest. So go check them out. And thanks again for a great conversation, Mateo.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.